Hear an echo.
Yeah, it's the YouTube recording. It's a little delayed, but yeah, we should be good now.
Okay.
All right, we can go ahead and start.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Leslie Kirby. I'm the chair of the CRC, the Community Relations Committee of the Jewish Federation and Jewish Foundation of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. And we are very glad that this week is our first session where we're also co-sponsoring with the Nashville Jewish Social Justice Roundtable. So we welcome them to our event and look forward to co-hosting with them for the foreseeable future. This week is mainly going to be a Q&A session with some talk about Israel and what's going on there. So we have really three guests today. We have Noam Harari, who's joining us live from Israel. Shabbat Shalom, Noam.
Shabbat Shalom. Hi, everyone.
She's currently doing her quarantine time in Israel. I think everybody who comes from overseas has to quarantine. Is it 2 weeks?
Yes.
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 So Noam is going to talk a little bit about what's happening on the ground in Israel. And then we're going to have Avi Poster and Michal Becker also talk about their perspectives on Israel, in particular around annexation. And I think Michal has a map to show us to help us try to get a grasp of what's going on with the ABCs of the West Bank. So I'm going to start with you, Noam. So talk to us about what you're finding. How is it being back in Israel? What's going on there?
Okay, I feel like I'm a news reporter. Shalom, everyone. Yes, my name is Noam. I am shlicha here in Nashville. I am currently in quarantine in a hotel in Jerusalem. I landed about 9 days ago. And it's in a hotel that the government provides to people that cannot provide a place for quarantine according to the rules. So I decided when I landed to go to this hotel. I get 3 meals a day and the staff is really nice. So yeah, just pulling through, taking it day by day from quarantine. And it's important for me to say that I'm not an expert, but I'm here. I'm always reading the Israeli news. There's always something happening. And I'm happy that I get the chance to update you from Israel. So I'm just going to give you some of the headlines. And then if you have questions after, you can ask Michal, Avi, or me. I'll be happy to answer. And thank you for having me. So with COVID, right now, Israel had the first wave of COVID. The situation after that, the country was closed and the situation got better. And then the government decided to open businesses. And from there, the situation got a little bit to the worse. The numbers went up, and currently when I looked at the numbers today, keep in mind that there is more tests, therefore the numbers are more, but the numbers right now, as of yesterday, only in one day, there is 1,464 COVID patients. And around the country overall, we have 16,651 COVID patients. We just talked about it. There is a lot of people unemployed. My parents run a toy shop and they're just hanging in there and try to do their best. They're doing deliveries. This is a very sensitive situation right now in Israel, is it in the entire world, I'm sure. And I feel like it's interesting information. There are 2,393 police reports on people who didn't wear mask. So if you go on the street, you have to wear a mask. And if you don't wear it, you need to pay 5,000 shekels. So there is the amount of reports. So now we're in a situation that we're going towards a second wave of COVID, unfortunately. and it creates a lot of news. And a few days ago, the government decided to have more rules for COVID. Just as today, they decided to close a few neighborhoods again in Jerusalem, Bet Shemesh, Lod, Ramle, Kiryat Malachi, in specific cities. They decided to close neighborhoods that they know COVID is very, the virus is very active right now. As of 2-3 days ago, all the clubs and bars are closed. Restaurants, you can have only 20 people inside, 30 people outside. Synagogues, you can have only 19 people. All the shows that brought up again, they got canceled. Gyms and pools, it's all closed. Wedding venues, if you want to get together with people, you can only get together up to 20 people with distance, with masks. And all the summer camps are canceled from the 5th grade and up. And I feel like from the first wave, when everybody were optimistic till the point that we are now, everybody thought that Israel was handling the situation very good, as we all thought. And now we got to the point that everyone are now going back. I saw one report that said that a lot of people go now to the streets and cause some riots about the situation with economy, and a lot of people lost their jobs, lost their business, and now they wait, as Michal said, before we started, where now they talk about giving them a little bit of money from the country, and create a lot of problems. And as we talk about the government, and you can continue me after, we had last year 3 elections, and finally we have a emergency government. The government is on rotation. We have 2 years Bibi and then 2 years Gantz. Gantz is in quarantine right now. He got exposed to corona patients. He's now the Minister of Security, and the headline says right now that there's a lot of tension between Gantz and Bibi, and it takes in many subjects as annexation and the budget. So if it's for 1 year or 2 years, and people can feel the tension between them, and it just causes, the people say it causes for the decision to be a little bit slower, and every day counts with everything that's happened now with COVID and the economy. And with annexation, I tried, again, I'm not an expert. I try to gather as much information as I can so Michal and Avi can continue me. But right now, I've been looking at the news since July 1st. It was the day that something's supposed to start. And right now we feel like they're just sweeping it a little bit under the carpet until other subjects will be solved. But this is just a taste of what's happening right now. I'll be happy to update more. I know it was a little bit all over the place, but I'm here for if you have any questions. And thank you.
Thank you, Noam. I think we have a manageable enough group that if anyone wants to ask Noam a question before Michal and Avi talk for a little bit, go ahead. You can unmute yourself and talk to her directly. Your quarantine, you have 5 more days?
Yes. Yeah, I'm leaving Wednesday. Yes. And I'm doing a test on Sunday, so
All right.
Oh, everybody give your
So-
I
fingers
want to know.
crossed.
I want to know where
Oh.
your parents' toy store is.
Oh, it's in Modi'in. It's in Modi'in.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
No, I want to know what the flight was like. How was it going there?
Well, the airport looks empty. When you go in, it's under constructions as well. So it was all strange. I've been with a mask for 24 hours straight. And just like I imagine after a year that I haven't seen like my family and friends, I imagine like going back home will be a little bit different. And I got a little bit excited and I forgot to say that, but the first time I saw my parents was when I asked one of the officers that in here to see them because I haven't seen my parents in a year. And I sat in one side of a rope and they sat on the other side. And I just say, hi, I'm here. And we had like 10 minutes to just talk and catch up. And then they left, but they left me with a lot of food. But it's just a strange experience to go back to this situation, because even now I'm going back to Nashville, and if something happens like in Israel, I have to be in quarantine for 2 weeks. So there's not a lot of time and I need to be very, very protected. So yeah.
What airline did you fly?
United.
United. And it was okay. You're okay.
Yeah, it was great.
Okay,
It was great.
good.
The flight attendants were really nice. I had a whole row for myself. I saw 4 other shlichim, which made me feel like home. But yeah, it's a long journey anyway. But with COVID, it was a very strange to go back to Israel and see the airport completely empty, completely empty. But I found my suitcase faster, so yeah.
Anyone else have questions for Noam right now? Okay, why don't we turn it over to Avi and Michal then for talking about ABCs.
Should I start, Avi, or?
Yeah, why don't you? And I'll just build from there.
Okay.
If it's even important.
Yes, because so I want to talk about the annexation, but for now, and with something we talked about with Avi and Deborah, since it's not happening, I found it also very interesting to talk about the fact that it's not happening. And so let's focus on that and then get into actual details of what this annexation was supposed to mean. So as Noam said, there's a lot of things happening right now in Israel, as the entire world, but it's sometimes hard to it's so overwhelming. So it's hard to really grasp like what everything means. And one of the biggest thing I think that was hard even to digest was the idea of annexation. If it would have happened, in my opinion, and many others, it would have been like a whole earthquake to the area. It would have obviously dramatically affected the life of Palestinians in the West Bank. It would have affected Israel's like international relations with the Arab world, with Europe. It would have affected any possibility for future peaceful negotiations. So there was a lot of things that were in stake, and that why, like, there was like people who did read and were informed about it. It was like, okay, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And then July 1st came, as Noam described, and it was like, puff, no one talks about it in a way that it was hard to find information about what's going on in the Israeli news. It was like they reported that Netanyahu doesn't even talk about it in meetings. I was telling Deborah, I was like trying to watch the evening news, and on Friday, which is usually the summary of everything that happened, it was last week, the week that when it was supposed to happen, and you just end up not having time for it. It wasn't high priority enough even to talk about it. And I found it fascinating. Like, I really find it fascinating, especially because the way I see it, it represents the way decisions are made in Israel nowadays. Like, it's a great example of kind of, let's take that example of annexation and look what it means about how decisions are made right now in Israel's government. But before we start, I'm gonna share my screen. So let's, yeah, I'm sorry. Do you see it well? Do you see it a full screen, or do you see it like in, can you see it in full screen, or do you see it in like slideshow screen?
It's not in full screen.
not-
It's not
okay.
full, yeah.
Full, okay. It's because of the, okay.
Yeah, but we can read it. It's very
Okay.
easy to read.
No, it's okay. Sorry, that's my note. Here you go. Do you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. So the annexation plan. So the annexation is in fact the application of Israel's sovereignty on parts of the West Bank. The idea wasn't just to take the entire West Bank and make it Israel, but it was like in parts that we're going to talk about, it's called Part C territory. And what happens, like, since 67, when Israel occupied those territories, I know people have a problem with this word, but I'm going to use it. Those territories didn't become part of Israel's state. That means, which is kind of ridiculous, but like the Israel law doesn't apply to people who live in these territories. And when you think about it, it means everything. It means like labor laws, environmental laws, like everything, taxation. So in order to be able to settle, especially Jewish people in that area, so Israel has this like very complex mechanism of taking laws and making them military laws, because what happens, like, in that area is an area that the military controls the civilians and the actual like Israeli army that is there. So for example, if there's an Israeli settlement in the West Bank, if they need anything, they don't have police, they have the military. And every Israeli law is translated to a military order, which becomes, then can be applied as law in the West Bank. So, and obviously when you come to this, then there's distinction between what applies to Jewish people who live there and what applies to Palestinians. And that will actually make all the difference in the annexation. But the idea of the annexation plan was to make it easier for settlers to settle in the West Bank, to buy land, to not having to kind of have all this deal with laws. They just get whatever Israel, like Knesset passes, will apply directly to them. So that's the annexation. Yeah, I kind of talked about it. I didn't do it full screen. So the annexation's like, yeah, so it means like in general, and we can get to the details, there's so much to say about it, but we can get to it later because again, I wanna focus on the decision-making. But the implication of such an annexation would have meant that Israel, the Palestinians would have lost a lot of their property right, their right of movement. They would be much more blocked which roads they can use and which don't. That means that they would have the access to their work would have been influenced, the ability to protect their natural resources and their legal protection, because another important thing to say that as much as by the international law, this occupation is not legal, there are lots of international laws that are still guide Israel's decisions in the West Bank. And if there's an annexation, this will be deleted. Like Israel won't feel that they have to comply with international law. So again, as we said, it would have enabled fast expansion of the Jewish settlements. It would have affect, like, eventually, we always say that, I don't know if it's going to happen, but people say that eventually Israel will have defined internationally recognized border, which it doesn't have right now. And that would have affected the way, the shape of these borders. And would again continue this like weird situation like Israel has in the Golan, that in one hand, there's a territory that it's part of Israel as far as Israel concerns, but it's not recognized by the international community, which is the basic condition for, let's say, a state. Sorry. So when we talk about that, we want to think about, when we talk about that and we have like this plan, and then it's a question of like, what happened or what led to the decision of having this annexation, we obviously have to look at it at the point of view of the only single decision maker right now in Israel. Someone want to guess who I'm talking about?
Gotcha.
Bibi Netanyahu. So when you think about it, and that's something that, again, I'm taking this annexation as an example, but you can think about it of everything that happens in Israel right now. It's really taking the point of view of where Bibi Netanyahu is in right now, what's his state, and based on that, it's much easier to analyze every decision making that is happening in Israel these days. So Netanyahu's point of view, what's going on with Netanyahu? So Netanyahu, as we all know, he's on trial. His trial started, and it's a very serious trial, and it doesn't look good for him. He's about to lose his prime minister's seat. If nothing happens by November, not the coming November 2021, Netanyahu will have to give his seat to Benny Gantz based on the rotation agreement that they just signed in May. After 11 years, it's going to be actually 12 years in office, which is not something that is easy for him to think about. His government is not functioning. It's not very new. He's lost his loyal support of the right wing following this annexation and before the elections, actually. And the most two important factors are like COVID. There's a feeling of loss of control. And following this, the economic crisis that is in Israel as much as is in the rest of the world. So Netanyahu is facing this, like he's there and he feels that he needs to do something. And one of the things he needs to do is something that first will distract people from whatever is happening. And you know what, let's continue before I go there. So he feels like he needs to do something. And that's what kind of leads him to make the decision. And the reasons for that are like history and legacy. What does it mean? If you think about it, almost every Israel is a young state, and almost every prime minister in Israel had something, not saying all of them, but has done something that left their mark in history. You know, David Ben-Gurion, and we know, I'm thinking about Rabin, I'm jumping a few, Begin, Shamir, Peres, all of them had something, they did something that left some, called Damir, obviously, left some remarks in history. And Netanyahu, again, might end up 12 years of tenure, and he hasn't done anything. And he's terrified because he cares about his stuff. And second, it could be that the only thing that people will remember from him is the fact that he went to trial and might end up in jail. Right. He doesn't want this picture. He wants to do something that will make people remember him for other things. Timing, Trump, as some of you know, published a peace plan a few months ago. I don't even remember when it was, I think so, 6 months ago. And in this peace plan is the first time that there's a full, like, let's say, legitimation for a vast annexation of parts of the West Bank. And we all know that Trump might not stay there till November, after November. So Netanyahu feels the urge to do it now because he feels like if it's not happening now, it's not gonna ever happen, especially if the Democrats win. Another reason for timing is COVID. Like, everyone is busy. No one will pay attention. Like, I think about normal days, if something like an annexation would have popped up, we would have seen like Europe and the UN and people shouting, and it's not like they did do that, but the priority of people, the attention of most of the people is actually towards like their life in quarantine and COVID, and not necessarily that little country in the Middle East. And elections. Netanyahu doesn't kind of is always is in always state of getting ready for the next elections. And there's always the feeling that the elections are going to be sooner than planned. And going to elections in spite of like bad economic situation and COVID, but saying, hey, I got you the West Bank, might do well for him, given the circumstances. So he has all this incentive to do it. He's getting ready again, and time passes by, and you hear that like legal advisors don't know what's going on. The army didn't know what's going on. Like there wasn't, eventually now we know that there wasn't really a plan. It just faded away. So let's talk about the reason of why. So why made Netanyahu change his mind? Again, timing Trump. Trump is a little bit busy right now with other things. And it's not like he has more attention, or he's not, I would say, like he's not gaining anything right now by supporting Netanyahu in his plan. So this card didn't play so well. COVID, people in Israel are busy and they're not paying attention to what Netanyahu wants to do in the West Bank because they don't have anything to eat. They're like, again, as we talked before this talk, there's 17% of unemployment in Israel. People want Netanyahu to take care of their immediate needs and not of the settlement's needs. Opposition from the right, I don't know how much you know about it, but actually you would expect that people from the right wing will support such a plan because they want greater Israel. But in fact, like his biggest opposition was from the right wing. People in the right wing, especially in the settlements, were afraid that this plan will legitimize future Palestinian state. And they're like, rather not to get anything right now if they can prevent the idea of having a Palestinian state, which an argument that I find very interesting, because I don't know how much you know, but in 1947, a year before the establishment of the State of Israel, the UN submitted a map, a division map that divided the area of Israel for, between the Palestinians and the Jewish people. And the Palestinians back then refused for this plan. They did not want to agree to such division because they did not want to think of the idea of having a Jewish state in the area. So when you think about it, the same Zionists are doing like the opposite right now. And the last thing is that it wasn't a good enough destruction. And that's a very important note, because the way I see it, like the idea that people will care right now about annexation when they have a global pandemic, when there's such economic crisis that they don't know what to do. And the idea that people will just drop that frustration and like Netanyahu just because he annexed more territories to Israel just shows how much he's disconnected from what's happening to people right now. How much he doesn't see that people want to eat, because he doesn't see it. And not only that, not like it's kind of, I have more evidence to support it, but just by the fact that even the last 2 weeks, he asked from the state of Israel to fund his trial expenses, or to help funding, or to let him ask for like gifts from friends to pay for his lawyers. Or for example, that he asked from the state of Israel to waive he owes like 800,000 shekels to the tax, to the Israeli IRS. And he asked Israel to waive it for him. When people are losing their jobs. So I'm saying like in that story actually shows how much like he has one way to make a decision, and it's very unrelated to what happens on the ground. That's it. So in the meantime, what he does is like, so Netanyahu realized, okay, this didn't work. So now, especially as the pandemic is doing even worse, he's just, again, as Netanyahu always does, his best his best talent is to take a very like when he's in trouble or when he needs to distract, he takes one enemy or one threat and puts all his energy there. So now that the corona is back, he's back to do that again. It's again, we all need to be together. We all need to do that. And as part of that, he passes 2 laws that are very problematic, and somehow one of them was able to pass. And that law is the law of that allows the government, because it's emergent, and I'm doing like that because I don't think it's satisfied that, but again, if people want to ask me a question about it, it's fine. But like because it's an emergency, they passed a law that allows the government to make decisions without the approval of the Knesset. And what does it mean? The Knesset is the legislator and the government is the executive branch. And in Israel, since it's a parliament system, the legislator is the only accountable institutions that people have. Like when citizens vote in Israel, they vote for the Knesset, not for the government. The Knesset then forms the government. That means that if you don't pass decisions through the Knesset, it means that you don't really have accountability to your decisions. And when it passes that, and by the way, and like the most terrified fact in all that is that that law passed in the Knesset.
Right.
Among the opposition, there are like 59 out of 120 parliament members who are the opposition. Among them, only 24 were actually present in the vote. So now, like again, because it's an emergency, it's not permanent. So the government can make a decision, just go ahead and do it. And then the Knesset and the committee in the Knesset has 10 days to decide if they agree or don't agree. And if this committee doesn't have time to do it, so it goes to the floor. But the problem in the floor is that in the Knesset, the floor, it's not like here, you don't do hearings, you don't ask for experts' opinions, you just vote. So you create a situation that the government can make a decision. It's not gonna go through any research or investigation of the Knesset, and would just go straight to vote. So yeah, so again, it's a bit all over the place, but my point is like to think about most of what's happening now can be interpreted as like a survival attempt of Netanyahu. And since he has such a good control of what's, in the government, in the Knesset, and since there is a state of emergency, and no one has the attention to get into details, so things happening and things like, annexation that failed, or laws like this and other, I have other examples, but I don't want to make it too long.
Noam, or sorry, Michal.
Yeah.
Just sorry to interrupt you, but I want to make sure that we have the opportunity
Sorry.
to ask questions.
I'm sorry, Avi.
You gave us a lot to think about. I do want to make
I'm
sure
done.
that Avi can add if he has thoughts, and also that people can ask questions. So let's pause for a few minutes now. Do you have questions for Michal about the topic she was
covering? If you want, I can also let Avi talk and we can answer questions later if it's better.
Why don't we do that? Because I just wanted to add something to Michal. Michal, you are a wonderful teacher. You laid it out as I've been on many calls, and you laid it out as clearly and painted the picture that really helps gives clarity.
Thank you.
For you. And you know your stuff, obviously. I just learned a bunch from you. Just a little bit quick. I come from a Zionist background, as all of you do. My parents were actually labor Zionists, so think Ben Gurion, think kibbutzim. We grew up in that environment. My sister has lived in Israel for 65 years. My mother lived there her last 30. They are part of the left wing. They are part of labor. They don't know where to go now because labor is in so much trouble. But the bottom line is, they see things in Israel, not just through a political lens and a national lens, they see it through a personal lens. So let me describe their personal situation, which colors their opinion, and it changes day by day or event by event. So they live in a town called Ashdod. Ashdod is between Tel Aviv and Ashkelon. It's right on the water. It's in direct rocket fire if Gaza so choose to act up again. And on one visit I had with Joey to my sisters, we know what it's like going to the shelters 30, 40 times in 7 days. She also has her only one grandchild, her daughter's son, who is going into high school. And they're scared. They're scared about his service. They know he will do 3 years of service. There's no question. As an only child, my niece does not have to sign him up for a combat unit. And she's already told him since birth she would not. But he has the pressure. He's putting pressure on her to do what his friends are doing. And so there's a little conflict, but my niece is holding ground. My sister and my niece are worried more about annexation than other families might be, because this young joy of theirs is so close to army and they want him to serve in a more peaceful time. And the fear that those are worried about annexation is that it will rile the sides up. It'll rile Hezbollah up in the north. It'll rile up Hamas as an excuse to do whatever mischief they do. And they're worried about, if not an intifada, I won't go that far, but they're worried about, what IDF in the West Bank. So I see things through her lens. I'm very careful. I believe as a Zionist, I have a right to an opinion. Herzl wanted us all to feel like we were part of a world community, but I'm very careful with my opinion when I talk to my family, because they made that sacrifice to live in Israel. It's not a sacrifice. They made the decision to live in Israel. So I'm very, very careful not to cross a line, even with my close family. But I just wanted to say one more thing about the West Bank. I'm obviously on the left side of everything. I strongly believe annexation is a bad move, especially now. I strongly can give 12, 15 reasons off the top of my head, which I won't do, but happy to talk to anyone about what those reasons are. But I just wanted you to picture the West Bank, because we talk about areas A, B, and C.
Should I show the map, Avi?
Yeah, if you have a map, that would be great.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people think they're contiguous areas. Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
So look at,
so yeah, you can see the ABC, and later I can average. So I have the same. I can add where the settlements are. I have another one.
Okay, so you could do that better than I can, but just think of the bottom part south of Jerusalem is what the Israelis call Judea, and the part north is Samaria. And if you look at the different colors, they're very important. I'm not quite sure I can read what the green, but look at the white area.
The green is, I mentioned, obviously you can see the ABC, and the green is the area of the settlements, like the territory.
Good.
And yeah, I can show you,
Good.
like, sorry, not sorry.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
That's perfect.
if you see, that's a bit messier, but here you have,
Go back to the other one, because
Yeah.
the settlements, it'll give you an idea of,
Yeah.
So look at the map. If the white areas, the light areas, that is area C. And that consists of about 60% of the West Bank. It doesn't quite, because it includes the settlements. And if you look at the brown areas, it's area A. And it consists of about 18%, 15, somewhere between 15 and 20%. Area B is about 20%, and the area C is 60%. It's not contiguous. So for Palestinians to go from one area to another, it's difficult for them.
Avi, I'm just gonna say what it means, ABC.
Go
A
ahead.
means like a total Palestinian control. It means like myself, I'm an American citizen now, so I can, but like as an Israeli citizen, I'm not allowed to go to this area,
Right.
in theory. And C is only Israel. And B is like like the Palestinian controls something like education and health, but it's still like under like Israel's military control.
Right. And even in A, arrests are really very difficult because the Israelis have the power of arrest.
Yes.
But the point of all this is the white area is necessary. The Israelis understand, if you look at the area that borders Israel, and my pen won't do it, but to your left, those white areas perform buffer zones. Were not in existence in 67, so Israel wants to keep a buffer around its border, especially around Jerusalem. But when you think of settlements, there's about 3 million Palestinians. There's about 650, 700,000 settlers, including East Jerusalem. And right now, if there isn't a two-state solution, you're going to always have this occupation that's divided up like a checkerboard that keeps Palestinians from moving from one neighborhood to another without going through checkpoints, although Israelis have much easier travel in the West Bank to visit each other. The largest settlements could be as many as 55, 60,000 people. Ariel is probably 60,000. So my point in this is it's an impossible area to ever really occupy without tremendous problem. And what it ends up being is that those being occupied are treated like second and third class citizens with less rights, with less access to public service. And in fact, an example would be radiation is not allowed in Palestinian hospitals. Because of the security arrangements, radiation is considered dangerous. So if somebody needs radiation treatment, you have to get permission to get it in Israel. And you could wait hours to get across the border for that stuff. But you're not allowed to do that. I mean, it's just a different world. So I promote a two-state solution. And I won't go into it, but today, Peter Beinart, who has always been a two-state solution, you know that this week he proposed a one state because he said Israel will never agree to two states. You can't live with occupation forever. It's not humane. It's not possible. It's taken a drain on the country. So he says, why don't we just make one Israel? I don't think he's really serious. I think it's to get everyone to start thinking. The Israelis would never, ever, ever, ever agree to a one state because it would be the destruction of Israel. But the Palestinians think that might be a better alternative than occupation. So the whole thing is a mess. And I fear the violence. I fear Israel being dragged into conflict. And I fear for my niece and I fear for my sister who runs into bomb shelters. And she is not in the first circle to Gaza. Ashkelon is, Sderot is. But I fear for Israelis. And I just think Bibi is doing this for all the personal and wrong reasons. And if he doesn't back off, I'll say one last thing and I'll quit. One thing Bibi could do is just annex the large settlements. Then he could claim victory and say he and Trump did that and have that as a part of his legacy. The problem with that is it's absolutely no gain for Israel because Israel already has full control of Area C. So just annexing parts of Area C gives Israel nothing but endangers it, other than giving Bibi bragging rights. So I'll stop there. I thought, Michal.
Yeah, I'm just going to show last thing.
Right.
If you think like this is on the left is what Trump suggested, and in exchange of a peace agreement, by the way, and on the right is what supposedly the annexation program was supposed to annex. Like obviously you can see. So yeah, but let's go for questions. So we want to keep people.
And the one last point: what gives Israel the right to make a unilateral decision without any Palestinian involvement in the decision? It's the occupier telling the occupied. how they're going to live the rest of their life. It's just not the way things happen in a good world. Sorry.
You
And
should
this
ask
is
questions,
going to-
otherwise we can continue forever.
Right. And Michal, you know that I say this because I have such great, deep love for Israel. And there's nothing you can do to get me to love Israel less. I just think Israel's wrong in this regard.
Yeah, we'll see what how things are going to develop. I hope we'll get some news of what's going on, but so far there are no updates, and the only thing that I saw is oh, sorry, I'm taking
No,
people's
I'm saying
questions.
like, yeah, I'm just, my comment, it's probably not gonna happen, but yeah.
Yeah,
The
I
question-
saw an interview in the radio. I'll say I don't want to say just quote someone without making sure, but Gabi Ashkenazi, he's a minister, and he interviewed to Galgalat, which is a radio station in Israel, and he said that Israel are on board with the idea, but it was a long time ago. But there's no development right now. I think they just trying to maintain their relationship with the United States, but sometimes it's not 100% as it should. But we'll see the developments.
All right. Questions for any of our three speakers today about COVID or annexation or anything else you want to know about Israel right now?
I'd love to ask a question about, these were really fascinating. Thank you. One question about the annexation. Worst case, so, does Bibi have the ability to unilaterally do this within the system? What are the checks and balances? And what's the likelihood? Suppose for personal reasons. I mean, this is the fear that a lot of us have, that after the election, assuming that Trump loses, what's going to happen between the day of the election and January 20th, when he has complete authority of a president and is leaving office. Is there, what kinds of checks and balances does the Knesset or Supreme Court have? I have another question, but I'll throw that out as well, because you can decide how to deal with it. The other one has to do with what are the economic consequences of annexation. And my guess is, and I'm just throwing this out, my guess is they'd be pretty dramatic in the short term. Assuming once COVID relaxes and travel is allowed, et cetera, but there'd be a lot of boycotts and things like that is the concern. On the other hand, since nothing's going to happen economically in Israel for the next 6 months, maybe now's the time for him to annex, and because it won't have that, by the time things open up, people will have forgotten about it. So I'm just wondering what what you guys think about the dynamics.
Can I ask for the check, the balance check, and you can do the money? No, I haven't,
You go.
No, I'm sorry. I just because this is that's one thing that drove me so there was a unity government that was formed in May. That meant you have the opposition and the coalition, and they're have under lots of agreements together. One of the preconditions for that agreement was the annexation. Gantz, who was the partner for the unity government, had to agree for annexation. That was the shock, because Gantz is not representing those voters, and he agreed to annexation in exchange of forming that government. So here you have check and balance gone. Second, because they formed the government, they have majority in the Knesset. So whatever agreement they have to do, if there was what we call the coalition discipline, it means that if all the parliament members who are part of the government, which is complicated, again, if you don't understand it, just ask. So that way, like the check and balances, like in that sense, doesn't exist. The only balance that can be in this situation is the court, the Supreme Court. And that's what, in a way, Israel is trying to cancel by annexing, because again, going back to the weird legal stuff in the West Bank, like since it's all still under international law, if the Palestinians in the territories have issues, if someone built a house on their land, the only thing they can do is to sue these people in the Bagatz, which is like the Supreme Court. And so far, the history of those suits is that like it always they always decided in favor of the Palestinians because of the international law. If Israel annex this territory, they're gonna all be under like, they won't be able to do that because Israel would not recognize the international law on those territories because they're gonna say that it's part of Israel, and the Palestinians will lose that. So it means that if the annexation will happen, the court will actually lose its position as being the checks and balance to the government. Sorry, Noam.
And to add to that, the headlines in the press in Israel this week has been Bibi takes a step closer to total autonomy.
Oh yeah, especially given
the
that
passage of just this week, the Knesset gave Tanamont permission to do whatever you need to do. We're not going to stop you. And so Mark, you're right. I mean, the frightening part is it, and it's costly because they got to put more. The cost of defending a decision to go into the West Bank will be in human cost as well as economic cost. And the one last thing is both the opposition, Gabi Ashkenazi and Benny Gantz, probably know the West Bank better than anybody. Because as chief of staff, they were both chiefs of staff of the army, and they both oversaw the West Bank. They know the territory there. So the Trump plan is gone in their minds because it divides the West Bank in half, and they know the Palestinians can't live that way. It's a divided, so they won't go with the Trump plan. They might go with maybe Ariel. I don't know. What do you girls think? Maybe Ariel they would go with, or?
I read and I wrote it. But again, I think in such a like a sensitive topic, I want to find it because honestly, every time I read the news this week, I wrote to myself notes. But I feel like when I see the comments of the people, and I always see the comments below, there are some people in both sides, and I don't remember who said it, but there are people in Israel who saying that support it. They said,
"Oh, sure.
If any time, this is the time. Like everybody are weak right now. We can ask anybody in the world. We are all tired of this situation. So this is the time." And on the other, they said, the other side said, this can be a travesty. Israel went through a lot, and I can say personally, any war, I was in the army when there was a war. Of course it affects the economy. Of course it affects our security of me and my family. But in general, we need to see what is going to happen with it. And we as a shlichim, as a group of shlichim, we are keep learning more and more about it, and we have a speaker that talk with us about it because for now there are no updates.
If you look at the public polling, not that polling is the answer because who knows if it's how accurate, but generally the public polling says somewhere around 50% of the Israelis are staunchly against the annexation.
49, not even 50.
Not even 50, and about 30% or so say let's go, and 20%, it depends on, Israelis sit in a coffee shop and every day they can have a different opinion. So there's 20% that, but there's a larger percentage that says no.
Yeah. I disagree. Yeah, well, there are 49% who says no, like for any kind of annexation, and then the rest are divided between different kinds of annexation. So then you have like this 29% who said, okay, as you say, okay, let's just annex Ariel and those like big clusters because this is what it's going to be part of the agreement anyway. And by the way, it has been part of the peace negotiations since 2000. That was always the case, that eventually Israel was going to have territorial swap, but that was as part of peace negotiations and not.
But would you agree?
Yeah.
Would you agree that most Israelis, whether they're for annexation or against it, most Israelis don't believe they have a partner in Palestine to negotiate with?
Oh yeah,
yes.
But what do you do about
Yes.
it? Whether like you do, obviously, and again, I'm not going to start analyze the history of this narrative, but yes, but the idea is like, it's not necessarily like we all like, everyone gave up, like everyone, like no one really thinks, no one is really optimistic.
Yeah, and they're very straightforward.
Yeah,
they're very straightforward with this. They say in some of the decision that had made throughout the years, Michal, correct me if I'm wrong, but they said we not negotiate. It's not a secret on some of the, of course, like the topics were different, but if but I cannot say that. I don't know exactly the percentage, but I hear even in my group of friends, we have talked about it, and there in my group of friends, opinion here and there.
So have you guys watched Fauda?
Yeah.
So Michal, you watched it? Noam, did you watch
like the
Fauda?
second season. The first one was good. The second wasn't.
I actually didn't.
So you know what my niece said to me in Israel about Fauda? She says she and her friends, my niece is about 50. She says she and her friends, now she's the one with the kid that might go into the, she says that what bothered her about Fauda is you could not tell who the good and who the bad guys were. And
that's what everyone liked the show. And by the way, Tehran now, it's a new show just bought by Apple TV. It's kind of the same concept, just with Iran. You know what's fascinating is where I grew up is like people grew up like an hour from the Green Line. Like again, I've seen many Palestinians and met a lot of Palestinians in my life, and there are people who are like used to live like 15 minutes or 20 minutes from where I grew up, and you don't know them. It's like those stories of walls, and this is, you don't know who these people are. You don't have even like, I grew up in the Galil, so I heard a lot of Arabic growing up, but people don't hear the language. It used to be the second formal language in Israel. So I think Judy had a question though, and we didn't. Yeah, you're muted.
Judy, you're muted.
Did you have a question?
Yes, I do. Actually, two came to mind. One is the annexation. Was there a distinct plan for it, or was it just we're going to annex? Was there something actually?
You have to go back to the Trump. The latest one is the Trump plan. That Jared Kushner and Ambassador Friedman were probably the architects. Right. Ambassador Friedman, many of them call him the ambassador of the West Bank, not of all of Israel. But he's very strong, as is Jared Kushner. They drew up a plan, but it said unilateral. It said, don't do anything until you get some kind of agreement. Well, Bibi took it as being, I got permission from them to start this thing going. But that plan, if you look at it, it's not that long. It's only about 10 pages. I read it once, and it's a little hard to understand. But yeah, there were land swaps in there, but it gave Israel control of 70% of the West Bank.
And the second question is, there is, from what I've read, there's a softening of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. If this annexation takes place, what happens? I mean, what is the prospect for those relations? Will the Saudis side with the Palestinians? It sounds like they're not even considering them anymore, but where does that fit?
The Saudis like had some comments about it when we talked about it, then they became silent. They
Right.
didn't say a lot, which was interesting. Again, I think it's easier just to wait and see what happens and then decide what you wanna like how to react. And I think they did smartly, strategically for that. But that was one when I thought of the risks or like listed those risks, that was one of them. Like, because Israel suddenly has some better relationship with the Saudi Arabia. Just one comment. The King of Jordan did reacted very strongly against it. And they're like, another risk of this annexation is if this would have happened, that would have risked a lot of agreements we had with Jordan, which is extremely important.
Right. And then Judy, I'm no expert, but I go on 2 or 3 calls about Israel. So I'm repeating what I heard from others. It's not my opinion. It's what I've heard. But they say, as Michal said, the number 1 person that they have to work country is Jordan. They don't want to lose that security they have there. And Jordan seems to be mad about it. The Emirates, the Arab Union, they have made strong statements. It's got to hurt the relationship. Saudis, I think, have the ones that are interesting are the Egyptians. They've kind of backed out completely and have said nothing. So and they're not crazy about the West Bank either, because they don't want it to bleed into the Sinai. And so they'll let Israel do what it wants. But Jordan and the Emirates, and I think it's going to hurt their state. And Europe is just, they may not cut Israel off, but they're not going to sit down.
Europe already reacted, Germany reacted, and France.
Yeah.
But what's important, and I'm sorry, Leslie, I'm going to do it super short, is that most of the economic agreement between Israel and the European Union are based on a very, very specific distinction between the occupied territories and Israel. That means that if there are like products that are produced in the settlements are marked as produced in the settlements in Europe. They're not marked as made in Israel. And that would have like really risked Israel in that sense, because Israel really relies, we don't hear about Europe here, and US doesn't think about the European Union as a big actor in the international arena. But for Israel, it's very important, and they get a lot of money, and they really relied on these trade agreements. And that would have meant, if the annexation would have happened, that that distinction between made in Israel and made in the West Bank would have gone, and they might like just mark all the products as West Bank because they can't distinguish. So it means that would have let Europe a very big tool against Israel in every future economic and trade negotiations.
Michal, isn't the EU the #1 trade partner?
Yes,
yeah.
I know, and I sat in those rooms thinking about those negotiations on those trade agreements. So I know how important it is.
Wow.
Okay, we're a little bit over our time. I want to thank all of our speakers. Clearly, we need another call about Israel. And I think we also need a call, and maybe Adam, you can run it about Fauda, because I know it's one of your favorite shows. But thank you to Noam and Michal and Avi for talking to us today about their experiences with and what they've learned about Israel with regard to COVID and annexation. And thank you to the Social Justice Roundtable for co-sponsoring this with us. And we look forward to more partnerships in the future. And Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Hey guys, you can't see it, but right above my head, the picture high, that's Ben Gurion.
Oh yeah, I can see.
He's my hero.
Actually.
Thank you, everyone. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you. Noam, Shabbat Shalom. We'll do more of these conversations. Thank you all so much.
Bye.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.